Super armor, bleeds, damage increases, and attack increases are only some of the things that BAEK YOONHO can do and are what really make him one of the best damage dealers in the game. So today I'm going to teach you all how to best build him to make him one of those best damage dealers. But with every character, the thing that is going to make them always so good is going to be their actual kits and how they function. As with BAEK YOONHO's passive, basically his skill damage will increase equal to 50% of the user's reduced HP ratio, and then whenever slaughter or violent approach hits, you'll then also be able to inflict bleed on the target. And then the skill damage that the user will then deal to enemies inflicted with bleed with magic beast claws and slaughter will then increase by 20% as well. And what's so good about the bleed debuff is, especially against bosses and enemies that have an extremely high amount of HP, is essentially the bleed debuff will deal damage equal to 1% of their current HP every 3 seconds for up to 30 seconds. And this paired up with extreme attack beast form is also going to help and benefit him a ton, as well as essentially what this will do, it'll do some damage and then has some mana point consumption, etc, whatever. But when this skill is actually used, you'll be able to apply extreme attack beast form, which basically gives him super armor as well as an increased basic attack damage, as well as increased basic attack speed as well. And this value is of 30% as well, so it's a pretty sizable increase, and you can really feel this when you start using him. But what this then does do, it will increase the damage that BAEK YOONHO will take by 15%, whilst dealing continuous damage equal to 4% of his current HP every 3 seconds for 10 seconds, which is fine. Which then all again will then tie into his passive, allowing him to increase his damage. So this then all links together with his basic attack, magic beast claws, as well as his core attack, slaughter, as well, as this is where a lot of, and pretty much most of BAEK YOONHO's damage is going to come from, as you'll be spamming these a ton until you're ready to switch out with like another character's QTE skill to then get more damage off afterwards. Then you can bring him back in to reapply all of his buffs and stuff, so then he can go again and do a bunch of damage. And it also ties into his ultimate skill, Divinity, as well, if that's how you say that, I have no idea, which basically will do 2,346% of his attack as damage on level 1. And then essentially what is really nice about this skill is it also works really well with, I guess, the less HP that BAEK YOONHO has. Basically you'll do more damage, as pretty much the BAEK YOONHO's damage will increase by 10% for every 10% of the user's HP lost, so you can get a really big damage increase from this as well, so always fantastic. So in terms of all these things that you should prioritize in leveling up, for sure, the basic attacks as well as core attacks are going to be the ones you want to level up the most, alongside his ultimate skill as well. And then of course Violent Assault is going to be another thing, as it's on a really short cooldown of 8 seconds with 1,077% of his attack as damage, so it's got decent damage with that as well. And then with his other things like his beast form, you don't really need to level it up for damage because the damage is really low, so you don't really want more damage on it, and pretty much its only purpose is really just to apply those buffs to him, so you don't necessarily really need the damage bonuses with it. And then if you want to, you can level up the QTE skill, but it's not something that you use so often, as you can only use it every 20 seconds, so it's not like the most worth it in as opposed to all his other skills. But if you have some spare materials lying around, then you can always level it up if you want to. And those are all the things that do make BAEK YOONHO, and well, especially Silver main BAEK YOONHO, a fantastic character. But what makes him even better is going to be all of the artifact sets that you can actually use with him. And the first artifact set you're going to want to run is going to be Solid Foundation. A Solid Foundation will increase the user's basic attack damage by 18%, which is something that BAEK YOONHO will benefit off of a lot, as well as you can also benefit a lot of off of the 4-set bonus as well, as you can increase the user's core attack damage by 18%, and when the attack hits, just basically whenever you use a basic attack and it hits, you can then charge your core gauge by 60, which basically what it means is you just get your core attacks much faster, so you can just pretty much make them a lot more spammable, so you can do more damage. And then the next best thing is going to be the Toughness gear set, as on the 2-set effect you get an 8% crit rate increase, and then on the 4-set effect you get a crit damage increase by 32%, which is a really big increase. However, this gear set with BAEK YOONHO does come at a pretty big cost, and that cost is being 1 dupe on him, as essentially once you have an additional copy of him, you can feed in the dupe to make him a lot stronger. But what you can also get is this passive right here, as essentially whenever BAEK YOONHO will use Extreme Attack Beast Form, which is the buffing skill that he has, he'll be able to increase his crit rate and crit damage by 3% for every 1 second for up to 10 seconds. So this means you can get like 10 procs with it, which is really good. So that's 30% increase in crit rate and crit damage as well, which is why if you do have that first dupe on him, then you can definitely 100% for sure really utilize this gear set to its maximum potential as well. However, with 0 dupes you still can use this gear set if you would like to, but I just think the Solid Foundation is going to give you a lot more consistency with the damage that you're going to get. And then of course with him being an attack scaler, scaler, the armed gear set is also completely fine, as you want more attacks as well, and also you get the opportunity to ignore 15% of the target's defense, so always great as well. And then for all of the accessory sets, you've got a lot of different options that you can use with him, but I think the two best things for him are going to be Champion on the Field, as well as the Berserker gear set. As Champion on the Field, as well as another gear set called Expert, are really similar, as essentially they pretty much both increase your attack stat basically whenever you crit. However, the Expert one is less consistent, but also has higher potential, whereas the Champion on the Field is just the complete opposite in that sense. But the reason why I think Champion on the Field is a much better gear set, as pretty much all you need is to crit 4 times to have a 20% attack increase, and I feel like, because at least I find when I'm playing with hunters, I switch out in between a lot of them a lot of the time, and I'm spamming their QTE skills a lot, so I feel like with that, then I think this is going to be a lot better, as you can get that 20% attack increase, and then by the time you want to switch out, you've already done a lot more damage with this gear set, as opposed to what you maybe could have done with the Expert gear set, but both are still really good. And then of course the Berserker gear set is fantastic for him, as pretty much the less HP that you have, the more damage you do, as basically if you have the force set effect, when you're below 70% HP, you'll be able to just get a flat 30% damage dealt increase, which is quite easy on BAEK YOONHO because of his ability with his one of his basic skills, being Extreme Attack Beast Form, to be able to not only increase the damage you do take, so you can get to that threshold much easier and faster, but also that you do just decrease the amount of HP that you have every 3 seconds for 10 seconds. So then for all of the stats that I recommend, well, I mean, funny enough, the game actually does recommend you what kind of stats you're going to want. However, it doesn't tell you what stats you want on certain pieces and stuff like that. As for something like his helmet, the additional attack main stat or just attack percent main stat is going to be the best thing that you want, as all of his skills do scale off of his own attack stat, so to be able to increase that as much as possible is going to be your goal. And then you have the chest plate or the body armor, which will always give you additional defense, and then you have the gloves, which will always give you additional attack, so there's no need to worry about the main stats for these. And then when it comes to the boots, you have a lot of different options, but the two that I recommend the most are going to be either defense penetration or critical hit damage, mainly crit damage probably being the most preferred one, as if you do have that first dupe on him, then you can utilize this crit damage buff a lot more. And then of course with the accessories, additional HP is always going to be the one that you get on the necklace anyways. And then the bracelet, you're going to want a dark damage increase, and then the ring is basically the same as the helmet, you either want additional attack or attack percent. And then finally the earrings will always give you just that flat additional mana point. And then finally for substats, of course, pretty much the 4 that you only really need to care about are crit rate, crit damage, attack, and attack percent, and also HP is also nice as well. Pretty much so those 5 are the ones that you want the most. Alright, so next up we have all of his best weapons and stuff like that he can use, and of course he's got a couple decent options, with of course being his very best option is going to be Howling White Tiger's Soul, as you can increase your basic attack damage by 8% all the way up to, I believe it's 30%, which is really nice. And then whenever the user uses a basic attack and lands it, of course, you'll be able to take damage equal to 0.5% of your current HP, so again it works nicely with him, but you'll deal damage equal to 0.2% of your current HP to targets as well. And this can be triggered every 1 second, and then the damage that you deal with this skill effect can increase from 0.2% to 0.5% as well. And then for SR weapons, the Steel Dagger is something you can benefit off of a lot, as it'll increase your basic attack damage by 6%, going all the way up to 16%, as well as the Steel Bow being another fantastic option, once again, if you have that first dupe on him, as you can increase your crit damage by 9% all the way up to 24%, which is also amazing. And then the Steel Longsword can also be used on those stages and stuff where you are pretty much fighting only enemies that are weak to dark damage, as you can increase your elemental weakness damage by 4.5% all the way up to 12%. So in this next section, I'm going to go over all of his best teams and how to properly set them up so you can create a really good rotation, so you can get a ton of good damage with BAEK YOONHO. And I feel like in a lot of teams when you're using and playing in Hunter mode, I feel like it's always a really good idea to lead off with a character that can deal a good amount of break damage, as if you're facing off against enemies with break meters, you're going to want to be able to break their break meter gauge as fast as possible, so these characters are going to be the ones that you want to start with. And for this first team, I'm going to go for a mono dark theme, but pretty much any character that can deal break damage is perfectly fine. However, Hwang Dong-suk is going to be the first character in this team, as Dong-suk has just pretty much, he has break damage and is kind of the only, well not the only, but one of the only dark characters that can deal break damage. But if you feel like popping off a little bit more, you can also go for Lim Tae-gyu, as Lim Tae-gyu being a ranger, it can also deal break damage with his core attacks and both of his basic skills as well, so that's always really nice, as well as his QTE skill, and himself can also output a ton of damage. And then next up is Lee Bora. Lee Bora is another character you can also lead with, as she is also she's just a really good support for the dark typing, as pretty much with her first basic skill being strengthening charm, you can basically throw down and create an enhancement circle for 10 seconds, which basically can increase dark elemental damage by 10% for team members standing inside the enhancement circle, which is really good because then it leads characters like Lim Tae-gyu as well as BAEK YOONHO to be able to benefit off of that damage increase, so you can get even more damage as well. And then she also applies the charm debuff to enemies, which just basically makes them take 15% more damage for 15 seconds, so also fantastic. So then essentially what your plan is going to be to use Lim Tae-gyu to get a bunch of break damage, or use Lee Bora first to get a bunch of debuffs on the enemies as well as buff your team, and then swap into the one or the other. And then what you'll then do is use the second character that you have in your party to then bring in BAEK YOONHO, who you'll leave him for a decent amount of time to then do all of your big amounts of damage. So then for this next team, it's going to be all about fighting bosses and enemies that don't necessarily have any break meters and just increasing the amount of damage that BAEK YOONHO can do. And in order to do that, Min Byung-gu is going to be the best thing, as Min Byung-gu not only heals, so if you get your BAEK YOONHO a bit too low, you can heal him up a bit as well, but what he also then does is also apply damage increase damage taken debuffs onto your enemies for 20 seconds with his punishment debuff, thanks to his basic skill Conviction of Light. And this effect can be increased from 5% all the way to a 15% damage increase or damage taken increase, thanks to if he has the disguised buff, which is just applied through his passive. And then he can also use his ultimate skill, which is called Heavenly Blessing, which basically will do damage and then will apply the Heavenly Blessing buff to his entire team, which is basically all it is a 12% damage increase as well as a 12% critical hit rate increase. Which once again, if you have that first dupe for BAEK YOONHO, well, that'll be amazing. But again, if you are disguised, then you can also apply a crit damage increase, which basically will increase the whole party's crit damage equal to an amount that is 40% of the amount that exceeds Min Byung-gu's basic critical hit damage for 12 seconds as well. So you can always use that as well, which is fantastic. And then of course, next best thing is also going to be Lee Bora. She's going to be second in charge basically. So you'll use Min Byung-gu and then get all of his buffs and bring in Lee Bora, as Lee Bora can also do some good damage as well. But as mentioned before, Lee Bora has the charm debuff as well, so that's even more damage taken increased buffs as well as the enhancement circle that can benefit BAEK YOONHO a lot. And then of course the very final character will be Silver Main BAEK YOONHO. So yeah, there you have it. That is a complete guide into Beast BAEK YOONHO. Really good character. I like him a lot. Maybe I'm a bit biased, who knows, but yeah, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.